The blood on Cole Brennan's knuckles was still wet when the door swung open. A woman stood there with a Henry rifle, 15 rounds chambered, 30 men frozen in silence. In the corner her father lay dying, beaten to a pulp for a debt he couldn't pay. Cole smiled, the same smile that had gotten 6 men killed. "Well now," he said. "Company." Nobody knew what would happen next, but everyone knew someone was about to die. This is the story of how Grace Harper learned that sometimes mercy is harder than pulling the trigger. 6 hours earlier. The blood on Cole Brennan's knuckles was still wet when the door swung open. Afternoon sun cut through the smoke and whiskey stench of Murphy's trading house, silhouetting the figure in the doorway, a woman with a Henry repeater slung low at her hip. 15 rounds, chambered barrel, angled down but ready. The room went silent. 30 men frozen mid-drink, mid-card game, mid-breath. In the corner, old William Harper sat crumpled against the wall, face beaten to raw meat, one eye swollen shut, ribs showing through torn shirt fabric, blood pooling in the dirt beneath him. Cole turned from admiring his work, saw the woman, and smiled that same smile that had gotten 6 men killed in Abilene. "Well now," he said. "Company." Beside her stood another figure, taller, a man in a deputy's vest hand resting on his gun. Thomas Reed, eyes cold as Winter Creek ice. Nobody knew what would happen next, but everyone knew someone was about to die. The question was, who 6 hours earlier? Grace Harper had been fixing fence line on the North 40 when she heard hoofbeats. She was 34 years old, unmarried, strong from 2 decades of farm work, mending wire birthing calves, hauling water when the well ran dry. Her hands were her father's hands, scarred, capable, honest. She turned from the fence post to see a rider approaching. The morning sun was behind him, making him a dark shape against the bright sky. But she knew who it was before he got close. Thomas Reed, deputy sheriff. 6 months in Red Creek, and he'd barely spoken a dozen words to anyone. He reined in his horse 10 feet away, dismounted slow, careful, like a man who'd learned not to make sudden movements around nervous animals or nervous people. "Miss Harper," he said. His voice was deep, measured, with something rough around the edges like gravel under boot leather. "Deputy Reed." Her tone was cool, cautious. She'd learned the hard way that when lawmen came calling, it was rarely good news. He stood there for a moment, hat in his hand, studying her with those pale gray eyes. There was a stillness about him, not the stillness of a man at peace, but the stillness of something held very carefully in check. "Heard your father's farm is in trouble," he said. "Heard from who?" "From Cole Brennan. He's been bragging all over town that Harper land will be his by week's end." Grace's hands tightened on the hammer she'd been using. The wood handle creaked under her grip. "This land has been in my family 3 generations. Nobody's taking it. That's why I rode out here. To warn you. I don't need warnings. Or protection." Thomas was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, but somehow that made it more powerful, not less. "Didn't say you needed it. Said you deserved it." Silence stretched between them. Grace studied him properly for the first time. She'd seen him around town, of course. Hard not to notice a man like that. 6 feet tall, broad through the shoulders, moving with the economical grace of someone who'd spent years in the saddle. But there was something else about him, something in his eyes, a kind of careful distance, like he was looking at the world from behind glass. "Why would a deputy care about our troubles?" she asked. "Because I've been watching what's happening in this town," Thomas said, "and I'm tired of standing by." The way he said it made Grace think there was more to that sentence, more he wasn't saying. She'd heard the rumors, of course. Everyone had. Thomas Reed came to Red Creek 6 months ago. Quiet man, hard man, never smiled. People said he was a war veteran, said he'd lost his wife, said he lived alone in a room above the general store and spent his evenings walking the empty streets like a ghost haunting the place where he used to be alive. Grace remembered the one time she'd really spoken to him. 3 months back outside the general store. A cowboy, drunk and mean, had grabbed her arm, made suggestions that weren't suggestions at all. She'd put him on the ground with one punch, broken his nose, and when he got up swinging, she'd laid him out again. Thomas had been there, had watched the whole thing. When the dust settled, when the cowboy was groaning in the dirt, Thomas had walked over. Grace had tensed, waiting for the lecture, the arrest, the speech about how ladies shouldn't use their fists. Instead, Thomas had looked at the cowboy, then at her, and said 3 words. He had it coming. Then he'd walked away. Now he stood in her pasture, hat in hands, offering help she hadn't asked for, but maybe, just maybe, needed. "If you need anything," Thomas said, "any time I'm at the sheriff's office." He didn't wait for an answer, just put his hat back on, mounted his horse, and rode away. Grace watched him go, hammer still in her hand, heart doing something strange in her chest. It had been 5 years since anyone looked at her and saw a person instead of a problem. 5 years since the incident, since Marcus Dalton had cornered her in the stable, drunk and aggressive hands where they had no right to be. She'd fought back, hard, put him in Doc Morrison's surgery for a week. The town had never forgiven her for it. Never mind that Dalton was a known troublemaker, never mind that 3 other women had similar stories. Grace Harper had used violence, and that made her unwomanly, dangerous, a woman to avoid. She'd stopped caring what they thought, turned down 4 marriage proposals because none of those men saw her as anything but a problem to be fixed or a scandal to be forgotten. But Thomas Reed had looked at her and said, "You deserve protection. Not you need it, but you deserve it." The distinction mattered. Grace drove the last nail into the fence post and gathered her tools. The sun was climbing higher, burning off the morning cool. Time to head back to the house. Time to start the day's real work. She didn't know that the offer Thomas just made would change everything, because her father had already set in motion something very dangerous, and by noon, blood would be spilled on Murphy's floor. William Harper was 79 years old and made of wire and leather. 50 prairie winters had carved deep lines in his face. His hands were thick with calluses from working 300 acres his grandfather had claimed in 1841. He'd survived a lot. The death of his wife when Grace was 8. The Comanche raid when she was 12. His son Jacob's death when Grace was 17. But he couldn't survive Cole Brennan's greed. The debt had started simple enough. Drought 2 years running. Then last spring, hail the size of hen's eggs had shredded the wheat crop 3 days before harvest. $2,400 in the ground, worthless as dust. William had gone to the bank for a loan to carry them through to next season. Cole Brennan, newly installed as bank president, had agreed, but the interest rate had been brutal. And when the summer crop came in thin, when fall brought early frost that killed half the corn, William couldn't make the payment. Now it was 3 months overdue, and Cole wanted his money, or the land, preferably the land. Every morning since Grace was born, she and her father had shared breakfast together at the same kitchen table, the table her grandmother had brought west in a wagon. Biscuits and coffee and whatever needed saying. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they didn't. The talking wasn't what mattered. It was the showing up, the being there. 50 years of that since the day she was born in the room upstairs, delivered by her mother's hands while her father boiled water and paced and prayed. Her mother had died when Grace was 8. Fever, 3 days from healthy to cold. William had carried the body to the family plot himself, dug the grave in frozen ground, and then come back to cook Grace's supper, because grief didn't change the fact that a child needed feeding. When Grace was 12, the Comanche had raided. Her father had hidden her in the root cellar, told her to stay quiet no matter what, and gone out with a rifle. She'd heard the shots, the screams, the silence after. When he came back bleeding from a gash across his ribs, he'd pulled her out, held her tight, and said, "You're safe. That's all that matters." When she was 17, her brother Jacob had died, thrown from a horse, broke his neck. Her father had held the funeral read from the family Bible with hands that shook, and then the next morning went back to plowing, because crops didn't care about grief, because survival meant keeping going even when going felt impossible. That's what 300 acres of Harper land meant. It wasn't dirt and wheat. It was every sacrifice. Every loss survived. Every morning her father chose to keep breathing and working and protecting what his father had protected and his father before that. 3 generations of refusal to break. And now Cole Brennan wanted to take it in a single afternoon. At 11:30 that morning, William Harper walked into Cole Brennan's office above the feed store. The office was too fine for Red Creek. Walnut desk shipped from Kansas City, Persian rug on plank floors. Cole sat behind that desk like a king on a throne, 28 years old and handsome in a way that made men careless and women foolish. Tailor vest, gold watch chain, smile that never reached his eyes. "Mr. Brennan," William said, hat in his hands, "I'm here about the loan." Cole didn't stand, didn't offer a chair, just looked at William the way a man looks at something he's about to own. 3 months overdue, Mr. Harper. The hail took the wheat crop. You know that. Everyone knows it. I'm good for the money come spring. Spring? Cole laughed, but there was no warmth in it. Spring's 6 months away. You'll be dead by spring, old man. Heart'll give out or you'll fall off a horse or something. Men your age, they just stop. William's jaw tightened. He felt every one of his 79 years pressing down on him like a physical weight. I'm asking for an extension. 30 days. That's all I need. And I'm telling you no. Cole stood, now walked around the desk, circled William like a predator sizing up prey. But I'll make you a deal, man to man. The way he said man to man made William's stomach turn. You land one punch on me, Cole said, stopping in front of him. Just one. And you get a full month extension, no interest, no penalties. We'll call it entertainment. I'm not fighting you. Then you're losing the farm. Today. Sheriff's got the foreclosure papers ready. I'll own your land by sundown. Cole leaned in close. That 300 acres your granddaddy died protecting mine. That house your daughter lives in mine. Every fence post you ever planted, every acre you ever plowed, all mine. William stood there feeling the weight of it. 3 generations. His daughter still working that land, still believing in it. Gone. Unless he could land one punch on a man 40 years younger. One punch against a man who'd killed 6 people in Abilene over a card game. One punch, William said quietly. Cole's smile widened. That's the spirit. Murphy's Trading House. Noon. Give the boys a show. Outside Cole's office in the shadow of the feed store awning, Thomas Reed stood with his back against the wall. He'd been following William Harper since the old man rode into town, had watched him tie his horse outside the bank, had watched him climb the stairs to Cole's office, and now, through the open window above, Thomas could hear every word. He'd suspected something like this was coming, had seen Cole working his way through Red Creek like a disease, buying up land from desperate men, calling in debts during droughts, using hired guns to enforce collection. Thomas had wanted to act before now. But wanting and being able were 2 different things. He was a deputy, not the sheriff. And Sheriff Wade was on Cole Brennan's payroll, same as the judge, same as half the town council. Thomas had learned a long time ago that justice and law weren't always the same thing. He'd learned it in the war, learned it again when his wife and daughter died of scarlet fever while he was away on patrol. 3 days, that's all it took. 3 days from healthy to dead while he was chasing outlaws for $75 a month. He'd quit the law after that. Drifted, worked cattle drives, broke horses, took odd jobs, tried to drink himself to death for about 6 months before realizing that wouldn't work either. Then 6 months ago he'd seen a notice. Red Creek needed a deputy. Small town. Quiet. The kind of place where a man could disappear into routine and forget he used to be somebody else. But Red Creek wasn't quiet. It was dying. Slowly. Painfully. With Cole Brennan's hand around its throat. And Grace Harper reminded Thomas of something he'd thought was dead inside him. Reminded him what it felt like to see someone worth protecting, worth fighting for, worth breaking the law for if it came to that. Thomas heard William Harper agree to Cole's terms, heard the old man's footsteps on the stairs, watched him walk toward Murphy's Trading House like a man walking to his execution. Thomas couldn't intervene, not yet, not without proof of actual crime. A bar fight, even an unfair one, wasn't illegal. But he could be there, he could witness. And if things went too far, If Cole crossed the line from cruel to criminal, Thomas could act. He followed William Harper to Murphy's, went in through the back door, found a spot in the corner where the shadows were thick and the light was bad. Changed out of his deputy's vest, left the badge in his pocket. Right now, he wasn't law. He was just a man with a gun watching another man about to be destroyed. The walk to Murphy's felt like walking to a gallows. Word spread fast in a town of 300. By the time William pushed through the door at noon, 30 men lined the walls. Ranchers, drifters, Cole's hired guns. Men who used to nod hello to William at church, who used to ask his advice about planting schedules and weather patterns. Now they just looked away. Cole Brennan had bought most of them the same way he'd bought the bank, the feed store, the sheriff, the judge. Money talks. Fear listens. Murphy's trading house wasn't much. Dirt floor, rough-cut bar, tables made from barn salvage from farms Cole had foreclosed. It smelled like old sweat and bad whiskey and the particular shame of men who'd given up fighting. The crowd parted. Cole stood in the center of the room, already rolling his shoulders loose, already smiling. "Rules are simple," Cole announced to the room. "Old William lands one punch, just one, and he keeps his farm another month. He doesn't, I take everything he owns. That sound fair?" Murmurs of agreement from men who knew damn well it wasn't fair, but were too afraid to say otherwise. William raised his fists. Carpenter's hands, farmer's hands. Good for holding a plow or driving fence posts. Not for fighting a man who'd killed 6 people over cards. Cole moved first. Not a punch, a shove. Two-handed straight to William's chest. The old man stumbled backward 3 steps. His boots scraped dirt. The crowd laughed. Nervous laughter. The kind that says better him than me. "Come on, William," Cole said. "Hit me. That's the deal." William stepped forward, swung his right hand. Slow. Telegraphed by 40 years. Cole ducked easy casual, came up with a right cross that snapped William's head sideways. Blood on his lips immediately. Copper taste. The room tilted. "That the best you got, old man?" William swung again. Put everything into it. 50 years of farm work behind that punch. Cole slipped it like smoke. Drove a fist into William's ribs. Something cracked. Sharp pain. Wet pain. The old man gasped, doubled over. Cole grabbed his shirt front, held him upright. Wanted everyone to see. "We're not done," Cole said loud enough for the whole room. "You haven't landed your punch yet. Still got your chance." What followed wasn't a fight. It was systematic cruelty. Cole worked the body. Ribs, gut, kidneys. Precision shots that didn't show on the face but did maximum damage inside. Making it last. Making it educational. Every man in that room learned the same lesson. This is what happens when you can't pay Cole Brennan. This is what defiance costs. William tried. Swung 4 more times, each one weaker, each one missing by more. His vision blurred. Legs wouldn't hold. Blood in his mouth now. Something wrong in his chest. Breathing sharp, wet, broken. Cole caught him under the arms. Held him up like a puppet for the crowd to see. "One more," Cole said, almost gentle. "Give me one more try, William. For your farm. For grace. One more punch and you win." William lifted his right hand. Barely a fist anymore. More like a wave goodbye. More like surrender. Cole waited, smiling, patient. Then stepped aside at the last second. William's punch hit nothing but air. The momentum spilled him forward onto his knees, hands in the dirt, blood dripping. Cole's boot came down on William's left hand, ground down, bones cracked like dry sticks. William screamed. First sound he'd made beyond grunts. High. Broken. Animal. "Oops," Cole said. "Guess you won't be signing any bank drafts with that hand." He kicked William in the ribs. Once, twice, 3 times, 4. Methodical, like kicking fence posts into hard ground. Professional. Brutal. Educational. When William finally collapsed face down, Cole dragged him by the collar to the corner, propped him against the wall like a broken doll. The old man's breathing was wrong. Wet, rattling, bubbling. Ribs weren't just broken. They'd punctured something. Cole walked to the bar. poured himself whiskey from the bottle Murphy kept for him, drank it slow while William bled in the corner and nobody moved, nobody helped, nobody looked. In his corner shadow, Thomas Reed stood with his hand on his gun, every punch, every crack of bone, every drop of blood. He'd watched it all with those cold gray eyes, and inside his chest something ancient and violent was waking up. He'd made himself a promise after his wife and daughter died. No more. No more standing by while good people suffered. No more duty before conscience. No more law before justice. But he'd also made himself another promise, that he wouldn't act alone, that he wouldn't be the lone gunman playing hero. Because heroes died and dead men couldn't protect anyone. So he waited, watched. And when Cole Brennan announced that nobody could touch William until he left, Thomas stayed in his shadow, stayed quiet, stayed ready, because he knew what was coming next. He'd seen Billy Cotter slip out the back door 10 minutes ago, seen the boy running toward the Harper place, and Thomas knew exactly what Grace Harper would do when she heard what happened to her father. She'd come, with fire in her eyes and a rifle in her hands. And when she did, Thomas Reed would be right there beside her, not as a deputy, not as a lawman, but as a man who'd finally found something worth breaking his promises for. Grace Harper was loading fence wire onto the wagon outside Garrett's Hardware when Billy Cotter came running up, 14 years old and breathless and terrified. "Miss Grace, your pa Murphy's Cole Brennan." Grace didn't wait for complete sentences. She dropped the wire, ran home, grabbed the Henry repeater her father had carried at Pea Ridge during the war, loaded it with 15 rounds, checked the action twice, found her father's old gun belt, the .45 revolver, fully loaded, 6 rounds. She knew what she was about to do, had known since the moment Billy said her father's name and Cole Brennan's in the same breath. There were only 2 ways this ended: Cole Brennan dead, or every decent person in Red Creek living in fear forever. She'd just buckled the gun belt when she heard hoofbeats outside, fast, urgent. She grabbed the Henry and stepped onto the porch, rifle ready, and saw Thomas Reed riding hard toward the house. He reined in, dismounted before the horse fully stopped, stood there in the yard looking at her with those gray eyes that suddenly weren't distant at all. They were focused, sharp, alive in a way she hadn't seen before. "I know where your father is," Thomas said, "and I know what happened." "Then you know I'm going to kill Cole Brennan. I won't stop you." He said it flat, simple, statement of fact. "But I won't let you go alone." Grace studied him, really looked, saw something in his face that matched what was burning in her chest. Not just anger, not just determination, something deeper, something like recognition, like he'd been waiting for this moment, like he'd been dead until right now and was suddenly violently alive again. "Why?" she asked. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with something that might have been pain, or might have been hope, or might have been both. "Because I failed to protect someone once," he said. "I won't fail again." Silence stretched between them. Understanding passed without words. Grace saw it then, the wound he carried, the ghost he was trying to outrun, and she recognized it because she carried her own ghosts. "You're a lawman," she said. "Right now I'm a man who knows justice and law aren't always the same thing." Grace looked at him, at the set of his jaw, the way his hand rested on his gun like it belonged there, the way he stood like a wall between her and the world, and she made a decision that had nothing to do with sense and everything to do with survival. "Let's ride," she said. They rode side by side through the afternoon heat. Didn't talk, didn't need to. There was something in the rhythm of the horses' hoofbeats, something in the dust rising behind them that said everything words couldn't. Thomas had spent 2 years trying to feel nothing, trying to be dead inside because being alive hurt too much. But Grace Harper made him remember what it felt like to have something worth protecting, something worth fighting for, something worth dying for if it came to that. And Grace, who'd spent 5 years alone, who'd learned to expect nothing from anyone, who'd built walls so high nobody could climb them, felt those walls cracking, felt something warm seeping through. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of it. The dangerous, terrifying possibility that maybe she didn't have to carry everything alone anymore. They tied their horses outside Murphy's. The street was empty. Everyone was inside watching the aftermath of William Harper's destruction like vultures picking over a carcass. Grace checked the Henry one more time. 15 rounds. Thomas checked his pistol. 6 rounds. "You ready?" he asked. "No," she said honestly. "But I'm going anyway." Thomas almost smiled. Almost. That's the definition of courage. They walked to the door together. Grace's hand on the latch, Thomas's hand on his gun, the sun behind them, shadows ahead, and between them something new and fragile and fierce, something that felt like hope, something that felt like the beginning of everything. Grace pushed the door open. The blood on Cole Brennan's knuckles was still wet when the afternoon light cut through the smoke. 30 men froze. William Harper lay broken in the corner, face unrecognizable, breathing wet and wrong. Cole turned, saw Grace, saw the rifle, saw Thomas Reed beside her, and for the first time in a very long time Cole Brennan's smile faltered. "Well now," he said, but his voice wasn't quite as smooth as before. "Company." Grace stepped into the room, Henry rifle rising to her shoulder. Steady, professional, no tremor in her hands. Thomas moved with her flanking right hand on his gun. Not drawing, not yet, but ready. Always ready. "Step away from him," Grace said. Her voice was flat, final, the voice of someone who'd already decided and was just explaining the decision. "Grace Harper." Cole spread his hands, playing to the crowd. "Didn't know you had teeth. Your daddy sure didn't. She asked you to step away." Thomas's voice cut through the room like a knife. Quiet. Deadly. Every man there suddenly remembered that Thomas Reed had been a soldier, had killed men before, would kill again if given reason. Cole looked at Thomas. Really looked. Saw something in the deputy's eyes that made him reassess. This wasn't the quiet man who'd spent 6 months walking Red Creek's streets like a ghost. This was the man underneath, the one who'd survived a war, who'd learned how to kill efficiently and without hesitation. "Deputy Reed," Cole said, "you're out of your jurisdiction here." "I'm not here as a deputy." "Then what are you?" "A witness," Thomas said, "to attempted murder." The room went cold, because that changed everything. A bar fight could be overlooked. Attempted murder could not. And if Deputy Thomas Reed testified to it, even Sheriff Wade couldn't ignore it. Cole Brennan might own the sheriff and the judge, but he didn't own the territory marshal. And murder charges went to the territory court. Cole's mind worked fast, calculating. He looked at Grace, at Thomas, at the 30 witnesses who'd just heard a lawman call this attempted murder. He looked at William Harper, still breathing, but barely blood pooling under him, and Cole Brennan, who'd built an empire on knowing when to push and when to pull back, made the only smart choice available. "All right," he said, "take the old man. But this isn't over." "Yes," Grace said, "it is." Thomas moved first, went to William, knelt beside him. The old man's eyes fluttered open, focused on Thomas's face. "Deputy," William whispered, voice bubbling with blood. "Don't talk. Save your strength." "Grace." "She's here. We're getting you out." Thomas scooped William up like he weighed nothing. The old man groaned a sound of pure agony, but Thomas didn't stop, couldn't stop. Had to get him to Doc Morrison before those ribs punctured something vital. Grace backed toward the door, rifle never wavering from Cole. She saw the calculation in his eyes, saw him weighing options, saw him decide that 2 guns against 1 in front of 30 witnesses with a deputy calling it attempted murder wasn't odds he wanted to take. "This isn't over," Cole said again. "You already said that," Grace replied. "But here's what you don't understand, Mr. Brennan. You beat an old man to prove you're strong. I'm about to walk out of here with him alive to prove you're not." She reached the door. Thomas was already outside carrying William. Grace followed, rifle still trained on Cole, until the last possible second. Then she was out. Door closing, sunlight and air, and the sound of her father's wet, painful breathing. They ran through Red Creek's main street. Grace and Thomas, one carrying a dying man, one carrying a rifle, both carrying something else. Something that had sparked in that room when they stood together. Something that would grow in the days to come. People watched from windows, from doorways, saw them running, saw William Harper's blood dripping in the dust, and nobody helped, nobody called out, nobody moved. Because Cole Brennan owned this town, owned their fear, owned their silence. But he didn't own Grace Harper, and he didn't own Thomas Reed, and that made all the difference. They burst through Doc Morrison's door. The old doctor looked up from his desk, saw William, and his face went gray. "Jesus Christ," Doc breathed. "What happened?" "Cole Brennan happened," Grace said. "Help him." Doc cleared the examination table with one sweep of his arm. Papers and instruments crashed to the floor. Thomas laid William down as gently as he could. The old man screamed anyway, couldn't help it. Pain was too much. "Out," Doc said. "Both of you. Let me work." "I'm staying," Grace said. "You'll be in my way." "I'm staying." Doc looked at her, saw something in her face that made him nod. "Fine, but stand over there and don't touch anything." Thomas stepped back, started to leave. Grace's hand shot out, caught his wrist, stopped him. "Stay," she said. Not a question, not quite a plea, something in between. Thomas looked at her hand on his wrist, looked at her face, saw the cracks in that armor she wore, saw the fear bleeding through. And he stayed. Doc Morrison worked fast, cut away William's shirt. The old man's torso was a mass of purple and black. Ribs showed through skin at wrong angles. Left hand was ruined, crushed, bones visible through torn flesh. 4 ribs broken, Doc muttered, probing gently. "Maybe 5. Left hand completely destroyed. Looks like someone stomped on it deliberately." He listened to William's breathing, put his ear to the old man's chest, closed his eyes, listened. "Punctured lung," he said finally. "Probably internal bleeding. Grace, he needs a hospital. Kansas City, or he might not make it. He's staying here. Then he might die here. I can stabilize him, but if those ribs shift, if the bleeding doesn't stop, if infection sets in..." Doc trailed off. Didn't need to finish. They all knew what he was saying. "Do what you can," Grace said. "He's not leaving Red Creek. This is his home." Doc looked like he wanted to argue, looked at Grace's face, decided against it. "All right. I'll do my best." He went to work, bandaging, splinting, setting bones. William faded in and out of consciousness. When he was awake, he kept saying the same thing. "The farm. Got to save the farm." "Just rest, Pa," Grace said, holding his good hand. "Don't worry about the farm." But she was worried. Because Cole Brennan had made his position clear. The farm was his unless William paid, and William couldn't pay, could barely breathe. Thomas watched from the corner, watched Grace's face as she held her father's hand, watched the way her jaw set when William talked about the farm, watched the way her shoulders straightened even though she had to be exhausted, terrified, ready to break. She reminded him of his wife, not in looks. Clara had been small, dark-haired, quick to laugh. Grace was tall, sun-browned, hadn't smiled in years probably. But the strength was the same. That core of steel that said, "I will not break. I will bend until I nearly snap, but I will not break." And Thomas made a decision. Right there in Doc Morrison's surgery with William Harper, fighting for every breath with Grace, standing like a sentinel beside her father's bed. Thomas Reed decided that he was done being a ghost, done drifting, done pretending he didn't care. Grace Harper had walked into Murphy's trading house with a rifle and fire in her eyes and had stood beside him like they'd been partners for years instead of strangers. And something in Thomas had recognized something in her. Warrior seeing warrior. Survivor recognizing survivor. He didn't know what would happen next. Didn't know if William would live or die. Didn't know if Cole Brennan would retaliate or retreat. Didn't know if this thing growing between him and Grace was real or just proximity and adrenaline. But he knew one thing. He knew he wasn't leaving, wasn't walking away, wasn't going back to being dead inside. Grace Harper had reminded him what it meant to be alive, and Thomas Reed was going to protect that. Protect her father, protect this fragile, dangerous thing that had started when they rode side by side toward violence and stood together when it came. He just didn't know yet that choosing to stay, choosing to fight, choosing to open his heart again would lead them all to a place where mercy and justice collided, where love and death danced, where the weight of a single decision would change everything. But that was coming. In the days ahead, in the choices they'd have to make, in the blood that would be spilled, and the love that would be earned, and the redemption that waited on the other side of violence. For now, in Doc Morrison's surgery, with afternoon sun slanting through dirty windows, 3 people stood at a crossroads. William Harper fighting to breathe, Grace Harper fighting to stay strong, Thomas Reed fighting to stay present. And outside in Red Creek, Cole Brennan was planning his next move. Because this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The real battle was just beginning. Doc Morrison worked through the night. Grace never left her father's side. Thomas stayed in the corner watching the door, watching the windows, watching for trouble that he knew was coming. By dawn, William was stable, barely. His breathing was still wet, still labored, but the bleeding had stopped. Doc had wrapped his ribs tight, splinted the ruined left hand, given him something for the pain that pulled him under into a restless, moaning sleep. "He'll live," Doc said, washing blood from his hands in a basin. "Probably. If infection doesn't set in, if the ribs stay in place, if his heart can take the strain." He dried his hands, looked at Grace. "But he'll never work that farm again. Not with that hand, not with those ribs." Grace said nothing, just sat beside her father's bed holding his good hand, staring at nothing. Thomas stepped outside into the cool morning air. Red Creek was waking up. Shopkeepers opening doors, a few early risers heading to the cafe for breakfast. Normal life continuing like yesterday hadn't happened, like an old man hadn't been beaten half to death while 30 people watched. He saw Sheriff Wade coming down the street. Big man thick through the middle star pinned to his vest like it meant something. It didn't. Not in Red Creek. "Deputy Reed," Wade said, stopping a few feet away. "Heard there was trouble at Murphy's yesterday." "More than trouble. Attempted murder." Wade's face went carefully blank. "That's a serious accusation." "It's an accurate one. I was there. I saw everything." "You were there." Wade's eyes narrowed. "In your official capacity." "I was there as a witness, and what I witnessed was Cole Brennan beating William Harper until his ribs punctured his lung, deliberately, methodically, while 30 men watched. Bar fight's not murder, Thomas. It's unfortunate, but it's not illegal. It was a setup. Cole challenged a 79-year-old man to a fight he couldn't win, then beat him nearly to death. That's assault with intent to kill." Wade was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was lower, careful. "Cole Brennan is an important man in this town. He owns the bank, the feed store, half the businesses on this street. You really want to go down this road?" "I'm already on this road." "Then you're a fool." Wade shook his head. "I like you, Thomas. You're a good deputy. Quiet. Don't cause trouble. But this is trouble you don't want. What I don't want is to watch good people destroyed while I stand by doing nothing. That's the job sometimes, standing by, keeping the peace, not making waves." Thomas looked at the sheriff, really looked, saw a man who'd made peace with corruption, who'd traded his integrity for a quiet life, who slept at night by not thinking too hard about the deals he'd made. "That's not my job," Thomas said. "Not anymore." He went back inside. Grace hadn't moved. William hadn't woken. The sun rose higher, painting the room in shades of gold and shadow. "You should go home," Doc said to Grace. "Get some rest. I'll watch him." "I'm staying." "Grace, you've been up all night." "I'm staying." Doc looked at Thomas. Thomas just shrugged. When Grace Harper made up her mind, arguing was pointless. "Fine," Doc said, "but at least eat something. I'll send my wife over with breakfast." He left. The room went quiet except for William's breathing and the tick of the clock on the wall. Time passing. Each second another heartbeat, another breath, another chance. Grace finally spoke. "You didn't have to stay." "I know." "Why did you—" Thomas considered the question, considered all the answers he could give, the easy ones, the safe ones, the ones that didn't expose the wound he'd been carrying for 2 years. But Grace Harper deserved truth, had earned it by walking into Murphy's with fire in her eyes, by standing beside him like they were already something more than strangers. "Because I had a daughter once," he said quietly, "about 6 years old, blonde hair, big eyes, laughed at everything." He paused. "She got sick. Scarlet fever. I was away. Marshal duty. Chasing outlaws for $75 a month. By the time I got home, she was already gone. My wife, too. 3 days. That's all it took." Grace turned to look at him. Really look. Saw the pain written in every line of his face. "I told myself it wasn't my fault," Thomas continued, "that I couldn't have known, that I was just doing my job. But the truth is, I chose that job over them. Every time, every patrol, every chase, every night away. I chose duty over family." He met her eyes. "And when they needed me most, I wasn't there." "You couldn't have known," Grace said. "No, but I could have been there anyway. Should have been." He was quiet for a moment. "After they died, I quit. Drifted. Tried to drink myself into forgetting. Didn't work. Nothing worked. Until 6 months ago when I saw that notice about Red Creek needing a deputy. Small town. Quiet. The kind of place where nothing happens. But something did happen. You happened." Thomas said it simply, honestly. "I saw you that day outside the general store, saw what happened with Dalton, saw you put him down without hesitation. And I saw what happened after, the way people looked at you, the whispers, the judgment. And I thought there's someone who refuses to break, someone who stands her ground no matter the cost." Grace was quiet for a long moment. "Most people see me as a problem. Most people are fools." Something like a smile almost touched her lips. Almost. "You're different from other lawmen I've known." "I'm not much of a lawman. I wear the badge because someone has to. But my heart's not in the law. It's in—" He trailed off. "In what?" "In protecting the people the law forgets about. The ones who don't have power or money or influence. The ones like your father. Like you." Grace studied him with those sharp brown eyes. Saw something there that made her chest feel tight. Something that might have been hope. Might have been the beginning of something she'd thought was impossible. "Thank you," she said, "for yesterday, for standing with me. You don't have to thank me for doing what's right." "In this town, yes I do." They sat in silence after that. Comfortable silence. The kind that only happens between people who understand each other without needing words. Outside, Red Creek went about its business. Inside, something new was growing, something fragile but fierce, something that would be tested in the days to come. William woke around noon, groggy from the laudanum, confused in pain. His eyes found Grace first, then Thomas. "Deputy," he rasped. "Mr. Harper, how are you feeling?" "Like I got kicked by a horse, several horses." He tried to smile, winced instead, looked at Grace. "I'm sorry, girl. I should have listened to you. Should have walked away from the farm." "Don't talk like that. We're not losing the farm." "Cole owns it now. I didn't land the punch. I lost." "You didn't lose. You survived. That's winning." William's eyes filled with tears. 3 generations. And I'm the one who loses it. Grace squeezed his good hand. "Pa, listen to me. We're not done. Cole Brennan hurt you. Tried to kill you. That's a crime. And crimes have consequences. Not for men like Cole. Men like him always win." "Not this time." Thomas stepped forward. "Mr. Harper, I was there yesterday. I witnessed everything. I'm prepared to testify that what Cole did was attempted murder." William looked at him with something like hope, something like disbelief. "You'd do that testify against Cole Brennan?" "Yes." "You'll lose your job. Sheriff Wade won't stand for it." "Then I'll lose my job." Why would you risk that for us?" Thomas glanced at Grace, found her watching him, found something in her eyes that made his heart beat faster. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said, "and I'm tired of watching wrong things happen." William was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Thank you, Deputy. That means more than you know." Doc Morrison came back in, took William's vitals, declared him stable enough to rest comfortably. But no moving around, no stress. And for God's sake, no visitors who might upset him. "I'll make sure of it," Grace said. She walked Thomas to the door. They stood there in the threshold, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "I need to go home," Grace said. "Check on the animals. Make sure everything's secure." "I'll come with you." "You don't have to." "I know, but Cole's not going to let this go, and I'd rather be there if he tries something." Grace nodded. Something passed between them. Understanding. Agreement. The beginning of partnership. They rode out to the Harper place together. The farmhouse looked the same as always, white paint peeling, porch sagging slightly, but solid. Built to last. Built by people who believed in permanence. Grace went to tend the animals. Thomas checked the perimeter, looked for signs of tampering, found none. But he had a feeling. That prickle at the back of his neck that he'd learned to trust in the war. The feeling that said something's coming. He found Grace in the barn forking hay to the horses. She moved with practiced efficiency. No wasted motion. Everything purposeful. "Your father built a good place here," Thomas said. "My grandfather built it. Pa just kept it going. That's harder sometimes, building something new. Anyone can do that with enough ambition, but maintaining it, protecting it, that takes real strength." Grace stopped working, looked at him. "You understand that?" "I do. Because you lost yours, your home, your family." "Yes." "I'm sorry." "Me too." They stood there in the barn with dust motes floating in the light and the smell of hay and horses and the weight of shared loss between them. "Can I ask you something?" Grace said. "Anything. Yesterday when you said you'd come with me to Murphy's, you said you wouldn't let me go alone. Why?" Thomas was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Because I saw my daughter when I looked at you." Grace's breath caught. "I remind you of her." "No, you remind me of what I should have been, what I wish I'd been, strong enough to stand up, brave enough to fight, willing enough to risk everything for what matters." He met her eyes. "You walked into that room ready to kill a man, and I thought that's what courage looks like. I was terrified. I know. That's what made it courage." Grace set down the pitchfork, took a step closer. They were standing very near each other now, close enough that Thomas could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, close enough to feel the warmth coming off her in the cool barn air. "Thank you," she said, "for seeing me, for not seeing a problem or a scandal or a violent woman, for just seeing me." "Grace Harper," Thomas said quietly, "you're the easiest thing in the world to see." Something shifted in the air between them, something electric, dangerous, full of possibility. Grace leaned in slightly. Thomas didn't move, didn't breathe, waited to see what she'd do. She reached up, touched his face, just her fingertips, gentle, tentative, like touching something precious and breakable. "I haven't touched anyone like this in 5 years, she whispered. "Why not? Because everyone who touches me wants something from me, wants to fix me or save me or change me into something softer, something easier." "I don't want to change you." "What do you want?" Thomas caught her hand, held it against his face. "I want to stand beside you, whatever comes, however hard it gets. I want to be the one who doesn't leave." Tears filled Grace's eyes. She blinked them back, fierce, refusing to cry. But one escaped anyway, slid down her cheek, Thomas caught it with his thumb, wiped it away. "It's okay to cry." "I don't cry." "Why not?" "Because if I start, I might not stop. Then I'll be here when you're done." That broke something in her, something she'd been holding tight for 5 years, since Marcus Dalton, since the town turned against her, since she'd learned that being strong meant being alone. She leaned forward, pressed her forehead against his chest, let him wrap his arms around her, and for the first time in 5 years, Grace Harper let herself be held. They stood like that for a long time, Thomas's arms around her, Grace's face pressed against his chest, both of them breathing, both of them alive, both of them feeling something they'd thought was dead forever. When Grace finally stepped back, her eyes were dry, but something had changed in her face, something softer, more open. "I should finish the chores," she said. "I'll help." They worked together, feeding animals, checking fences, drawing water, moving in comfortable rhythm like they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. As the sun began to set, painting the prairie in shades of orange and gold, they sat on the porch, 2 rocking chairs, Grace's father's chair and one other, Thomas and William's chair, Grace in hers, rifles across their laps. "This is nice," Thomas said. "What is this?" "Sitting, watching the sun go down, being quiet with someone." Grace smiled, small, brief, but real. "Yeah, it is." Grace: "Yes. Whatever happens next, with Cole, with the farm, with everything, I want you to know something." "What?" "I'm not leaving. I'm not walking away. You're not alone in this." Grace looked at him, really looked, saw the truth in his eyes, saw the promise, saw something that looked like the beginning of love. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay." They sat until dark. Then Thomas rode back to town, back to his room above the general store, back to his badge and his duty and his complicated life. But something had changed. The ghost was gone, the man was back, and Thomas Reed had something to live for again. He just didn't know yet that choosing to live meant choosing to fight, and the fight that was coming would test everything he believed about justice, mercy, and what a man was willing to sacrifice for love. The next 3 days passed quietly. Too quietly. Grace stayed at the farm during the day, went to Doc Morrison's at night to sit with her father. Thomas patrolled Red Creek, watching for trouble, waiting for Cole's next move. It came on the 4th day. Grace was in the general store buying supplies when she heard the whispers. Women pulling their children close, men stepping aside, eyes averted. The old familiar feeling of being unwelcome, being unwanted. She paid for her supplies, turned to leave, found her path blocked. 4 men, rough-looking, armed, not local, hired guns. She recognized the type, had seen them before during the range wars. Grace Harper. The one in front spoke, tall, lean, scar down his left cheek. "Who's asking?" "Name's Jack Reeves. Mr. Brennan sent us. Says you got 48 hours to vacate Harper land. After that, we'll help you vacate." Grace felt ice in her chest. "That land is ours." "Not according to the bank, not according to the law. Your daddy defaulted. The land's foreclosed. Mr. Brennan's being generous, giving you 2 days to collect your things." "My father was beaten half to death. That voids any contract." "Don't know nothing about that. Just know we got orders to clear the land by week's end." Reeves smiled, not friendly. "And we always follow orders." Grace's hand moved toward her hip, toward the pistol she'd started carrying, but she wasn't wearing it, had left it in the wagon. Reeves saw the motion, saw where her hand went. His smile widened. "You looking for this?" He held up her pistol. Must have taken it from the wagon while she was inside. "That's theft. That's confiscation of a weapon from a woman known to be violent. Sheriff Wade's orders. Sheriff Wade can go to hell. Probably will someday. But today he's the law. And the law says you got 48 hours. Use them wisely, Miss Harper." The 4 men walked away. Left Grace standing in the general store with every eye on her. every whisper about her, every judgment falling like stones. She walked out, head high, back straight, refusing to show weakness, but inside she was calculating. 48 hours, 2 days. Not enough time to fight this legally. Not enough time to find a lawyer. Not enough time for anything except violence or surrender. And Grace Harper didn't surrender. She found Thomas at the sheriff's office. He was cleaning his rifle. Looked up when she came in, saw her face, set the rifle down. What happened? She told him. About Reeves, about the ultimatum, about the 48 hours. Thomas's jaw tightened. Wade's behind this. He's helping Cole. Can you stop it? Not legally, not without the sheriff backing me, and he won't. Then illegally. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. If I act against the sheriff's orders, I'll lose my badge, could be arrested, could be tried for obstruction. Then don't. I'm not asking you to throw away your life for mine. Grace. I mean it, Thomas. You've done enough. You testified. You stood with me. But this is my fight, my land, my problem. It's not a problem, and it's not just your fight. He stood, came around the desk, took her hands in his. I told you I wasn't leaving. I meant it. Even if it costs you everything. What's everything worth if I lose the one thing that matters? And what's that? You. The word hung in the air between them. Simple, direct, true. Grace felt something crack open in her chest, something warm and painful and terrifying. Thomas, we barely know each other. I know enough. I know you're brave. I know you're strong. I know you stand your ground when everyone else runs. I know you held your father's hand all night while he fought to breathe. I know you'd die before giving up that land. He squeezed her hands. And I know that for the first time in 2 years I feel alive. And that's because of you. I'm not worth losing everything for. Yes, you are. Grace looked at him, saw the truth in his eyes, saw something she'd thought was impossible. Someone who saw her, really saw her. Not the scandal, not the problem, not the violent woman, just her. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll let you help, but we do this smart. We do this right. Agreed. So what's the plan? Grace thought for a moment. We need proof. Proof that Cole set up my father. Proof of the beatings. Proof of the intimidation. If we can get that to the territorial marshal, Cole's done. And where do we get proof? From the people who were there. The 30 men who watched my father get beaten. Someone in that crowd has a conscience. Someone will talk. Or someone will run straight to Cole. Then we find the right someone. They spent the rest of the day making a list. 30 names. 30 men who'd been at Murphy's. They crossed off the obvious ones. Cole's hired guns. The ones on his payroll. The ones too scared to speak. That left 12 possibilities. 12 men who might be willing to tell the truth. We start with Henry Walsh, Thomas said. He's got a daughter about Sarah Mitchell's age. Might respond to an appeal to do right for the kids. Sarah Mitchell. Grace had seen the girl around town, 9 years old, blonde braids, too serious for her age. Mother worked at the saloon, father dead, lonely child, bullied child. You know her? Grace asked. Sarah. Yeah, she comes by the office sometimes, brings me coffee. Just wants someone to talk to, I think. That's sad. Yeah. Kids shouldn't be lonely. No, they shouldn't. Grace looked at Thomas, saw the pain cross his face. His daughter, the one he couldn't save. What was her name? Your daughter? Emma. He said it soft, careful, like the name was fragile. Emma Reed, 6 years old, loved horses, wanted to be a doctor when she grew up. She sounds wonderful. She was. I'm sorry you lost her. Me too. They were quiet for a moment. Then Grace said, if we do this, if we fight Cole and win, what happens after? After. With us. With this. She gestured between them. Is this just circumstance, danger bringing us together? Thomas considered the question, considered lying, making it easy, but Grace deserved truth. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I'd like to find out." "Me too." He smiled. Small, real, the first smile she'd seen from him. "Then let's make sure we survive long enough to find out." They went to Henry Walsh's house that evening, small place on the edge of town, 2 rooms. Henry was a blacksmith, good man, honest, but scared, like everyone in Red Creek. Henry opened the door, saw Thomas, saw Grace. His face went carefully neutral. "Deputy, Miss Harper, what can I do for you?" "We need to talk," Thomas said, "about what happened at Murphy's." Henry's face closed down. "I don't know nothing about that." "You were there. You saw everything." "Didn't see nothing, just a fight, that's all." "Henry, please," Grace said. "My father nearly died. Cole beat him deliberately, systematically. You know what you saw." "I saw a fair fight. Old man challenged Cole. Lost. It wasn't fair. You know it wasn't." Henry looked at Grace. Something like guilt flickered in his eyes, but fear was stronger. "I got a daughter, Miss Harper. Little girl. I say the wrong thing, Cole hears about it, my shop burns down. Or worse. I can't risk that." "So you'll let evil win because you're afraid?" "Yes, because I got someone to protect. And so do you. Your father's still alive. He could recover. But if you keep pushing, if you keep fighting, Cole will kill him. Kill you both. And I'll be damned if I help that happen by running my mouth." He closed the door, left them standing on his porch in the dark. "That went well," Grace said bitterly. "He's scared. They all are. Then we're running out of options." "Not yet. We've got 46 hours. Let's use them." They tried 3 more men that night, got the same response. Fear, denial, doors closed in their faces. By midnight, Grace was exhausted, discouraged, ready to give up. "Maybe Henry's right," she said, as Thomas walked her back to her wagon. "Maybe fighting just gets us killed. Maybe I should take the 48 hours and leave." "You don't believe that." "I'm tired, Thomas. I'm so tired." He stopped, turned her to face him. "I know, but giving up won't make you less tired. It'll just make you empty. And what if fighting makes me dead? Then you die standing up instead of on your knees. That matter to you?" Grace looked at him, at his eyes, his face. This man who'd appeared in her life 4 days ago and changed everything. "It does," she admitted. "Then we keep fighting." She nodded, tired, scared, but not broken, not yet. Thomas helped her into the wagon. Their hands touched, lingered. Neither wanted to let go. "Be careful going home," he said. "I will. You be careful too." "Always am." "Liar," he smiled. "Yeah, little bit." Grace rode home alone. Thomas watched until her wagon disappeared into the darkness. Then he went back to his room, lay on his bed, stared at the ceiling, thought about courage and fear and the thin line between them. He thought about Grace Harper, about her strength, her stubbornness, the way she held her father's hand, the way she'd leaned against him in the barn, the way she'd trusted him with her fear. He thought about his daughter, Emma, how she'd laugh, how she'd climb into his lap and demand stories, how she'd said, "Daddy, when I grow up, I want to help people like you do." He'd failed Emma, but he wouldn't fail Grace, even if it cost him everything. The next morning brought news, bad news. William Harper had taken a turn. Fever, high, dangerous. Doc Morrison sent word to Grace. She came running. Thomas met her at Doc's office. Together they went inside. William was unconscious, burning up, thrashing, calling out in his sleep for his wife, his son, his daughter. "Infection," Doc said grimly. "From the rib breaks. It's in his blood now." "What can you do?" Grace asked. "Keep him comfortable. Hope the fever breaks. Pray." "That's it. Just hope and pray. That's all anyone can do with infection. Either his body fights it off or it doesn't." Grace sat by her father's bed, took his burning hand, felt him trembling with fever. "Pa," she whispered, "you have to fight. You have to stay. Please, William's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, seeing something that wasn't there. "Martha," he mumbled. "Grace's mother, dead 26 years. Martha, I'm sorry. I tried. I tried to keep the land safe. For Grace, for the family. Pa, I'm here. It's Grace." But William didn't hear, was somewhere else, sometime else, seeing ghosts. "Martha, I'm coming. Tell Jacob I'm coming. Tell him I'm sorry I couldn't save him." "Pa, no. Don't talk like that. You're not going anywhere." But William's eyes closed again. His breathing went shallow, rapid. Doc Morrison pulled Grace aside. "You should prepare yourself," he said quietly. "Fever this high at his age with his injuries, I don't think he'll make it through the night." Grace felt the world tilt, felt everything crashing down. "No, he can't die. Not now, not like this." "I'm sorry, Grace." She went back to her father's side, held his hand, and for the first time since she was 8 years old, Grace Harper cried. Not quiet tears, not dignified grief, but huge wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. Thomas had stepped outside to give her privacy, but he heard her crying through the door, heard her grief, heard her breaking. And something in him broke too, because he'd heard that sound before, had heard Clara crying when Emma got sick, had heard her crying when Emma died, and he'd been helpless then, couldn't fix it, couldn't stop it, couldn't do anything but hold her while their world ended. He was still helpless now, still couldn't fix this, still couldn't stop death from taking another person he cared about. But he could be there, could hold Grace when she needed holding, could stand beside her in her grief. So he went back inside, sat beside her, pulled her against him, let her cry into his chest while her father burned with fever and died by inches. "I can't lose him," Grace sobbed. "He's all I have." "I know. It's not fair. Cole did this. Cole killed him." "I know. And he'll get away with it. He always gets away with it." Thomas held her tighter. "No, he won't. I promise you, Grace. Cole Brennan will pay for this." How will he pay when the law protects him? Then we'll go outside the law." Grace pulled back, looked at him with tear-stained face. "What? You heard me. If the law won't give us justice, we'll take it ourselves." "Thomas, you're a deputy. You can't just—" "I can, and I will, because I'm done watching evil win. I'm done being helpless. I'm done standing by." "You'll lose everything." "I already lost everything. 2 years ago, my wife, my daughter, my life. I've been a ghost ever since. But you brought me back, Grace. You made me feel alive again. And I'm not letting you down. Not like I let them down. This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. Then let me help make it right." Grace looked at him, at the determination in his eyes, the love growing there, the promise of partnership. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." They sat with William through the night. His fever climbed higher. His breathing grew more labored. Doc Morrison gave him more laudanum, enough to ease the pain, enough to let him slip away peacefully when the time came. Around midnight, William's eyes opened, clear for a moment, lucid. "Grace," he whispered. "I'm here, Pa. I'm here. I'm sorry. About the farm. About everything. Don't apologize. You did everything right. You fought. You survived. You gave me a good life. Cole will take the land. Let him. It's just dirt. It's 3 generations. It's dirt, Pa. You're what matters. You taught me that. Remember when Mama died, you said people matter, not things, not land. People." William smiled weakly. "You remember that? I remember everything you taught me. I taught you good then, made you strong. You made me strong. And this man?" William's eyes moved to Thomas. "You love her." Thomas didn't hesitate. "Yes, sir, I do." "You protect her." "With my life." "Good. That's good." William's eyes closed. "I can rest now, knowing she's not alone." "Pa, don't. Don't give up." But William was already slipping away, already going to where Martha and Jacob waited, already leaving. Grace held his hand and cried. Thomas held her and felt his own tears falling, because death was always like this, always unfair, always too soon, always leaving the living to figure out how to keep living. William Harper died at 1 a.m, peacefully, quietly, with his daughter holding his hand and a good man standing guard. Doc Morrison checked for a pulse, found none, drew the sheet over William's face. "I'm sorry, Grace," he said. Grace said nothing, just stared at the sheet, at the shape of her father beneath it, at the end of everything she'd known. Thomas led her outside, into the cool night air. She stood on Doc's porch, staring at nothing, breathing in and out and in again, like she was teaching herself how to live without him. "He's gone," she said, flat, empty. "I know. Cole killed him." "Yes. I'm going to kill Cole." Thomas turned her to face him. "Yes, we are. Together. But not tonight. Tonight we grieve. Tomorrow we plan. And when we're ready, when we're smart about it, we'll have justice." "I don't want justice. I want revenge." "Then we'll have that too." Grace looked at him, at this man who'd become everything in 4 days. Partner, protector, something more than friend, but not quite lover. Not yet. "Promise me," she said. "Promise what?" "That when the time comes, you'll let me be the one. Let me pull the trigger. Let me end him." Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I promise." They stood together in the dark. Two people who'd lost everything. Two people who'd found each other. Two people planning murder. And somewhere in Red Creek, Cole Brennan slept peacefully, not knowing that his death was already decided, already planned, already coming. They buried William Harper on a gray morning when the sky threatened rain but never delivered. 50 people came to the funeral, more than Grace expected, the same 30 from Murphy's plus 20 more from outlying farms. They stood around the grave with guilt written on their faces, and Grace hated them for it, for coming now when it didn't matter, for bringing flowers when they should have brought fists 3 weeks ago, for their silence when her father needed voices, for their cowardice dressed up as respect. But she let them stay because her father would have wanted it, because William Harper had believed in forgiveness even when people didn't deserve it, because somewhere in his last fevered words he'd told her that people mattered, not things, not land, people, even cowards, even failures, even the ones who stood by and watched. Thomas stood beside her throughout the service, not touching, not speaking, just there, a wall between her and the world. She felt his presence like heat, like gravity, like something solid in a world gone liquid and uncertain. The preacher spoke about William's life, about his service in the war, about the land he'd worked, about the daughter he'd raised alone after his wife died. All true things, but they felt empty, hollow, because the preacher didn't mention how William died, didn't mention Cole Brennan, didn't mention the beating, the blood, the broken ribs that led to infection, that led to fever, that led to death. Everyone knew. Nobody said it. That's how evil survived. In silence, in the gaps between what people knew and what they were willing to speak aloud. When the service ended, when they lowered William into the ground beside his wife and son, when the first shovel of dirt hit the coffin with that terrible final sound, Grace finally let herself feel it. The loss, the rage, the absolute emptiness of a world without her father in it. She didn't cry, had cried all her tears the night he died. Now there was just cold, just fury, just purpose. Sheriff Wade came by after the service, stood at a respectful distance, hat in his hands. "Miss Harper," he said, "just wanted to say things are changing in Red Creek." Grace looked at him, really looked, saw a man trying to make peace with his conscience, saw it failing. "How's that?" she asked, her voice flat, dead. "Cole's leaving, heading to Tucson. Says Red Creek's got bad memories now, says he wants a fresh start." "How convenient. My father dies and Cole just rides away." "Well, the bank's got new owners. The Silverton family from Kansas City. Good people. They're forgiving some debts, giving extensions, being fair. Took 4 bodies and a dead old man to make things fair. Wade flinched. I know. And I should have stopped it sooner. Should have stood up. I didn't. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't bring my father back. No, ma'am, it doesn't. Wade put his hat on, started to leave, stopped, turned back. For what it's worth, Miss Harper, what you did took courage, more than the rest of us had. He left. Grace stood at her father's grave until everyone else had gone, until it was just her and Thomas and the mound of fresh dirt and the weight of everything unsaid. He's running, Grace said quietly. Yes. Because he knows I'll kill him if he stays. Probably. I still want to, even if he's leaving. I still want him dead. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. I know. Will you help me? Yes. But first, let's be smart about it. They walked back to Grace's wagon. The Harper farm sat empty now. 30 men had come that morning to help Grace move her belongings off the land. The new bank owners were giving her a week to relocate before they sold the property, a week to pack up 3 generations, a week to say goodbye to the only home she'd ever known. Some of the men had apologized while they worked, said they were sorry, said they should have done more, said a lot of things that didn't change anything. Grace had thanked them, because that's what her father would have wanted. But inside she felt nothing, just that cold fury, that need for justice, for revenge, for Cole Brennan's blood. Where will you go? Thomas asked as they loaded the last of her things. Don't know. Town maybe, rent a room, find work. Or you could stay with me. Grace looked at him. That would cause talk. Let them talk. Thomas, you're a deputy. You have a reputation. Had a reputation. Pretty sure I threw that away when I testified against Cole Brennan and Sheriff Wade refused to file charges. Wade refused. Said there wasn't enough evidence. Said it was my word against 30 witnesses who saw nothing wrong. Said the law was clear and I was overstepping. So Cole gets away with it. With the beating, yes, but not with everything. What do you mean? Thomas pulled a folded paper from his pocket, handed it to Grace. She unfolded it, read. Her eyes widened. Where did you get this? From Cole's office. Last night, after you fell asleep at Doc's. You broke in? I investigated, found evidence. The paper was a ledger, Cole's private accounts, and they showed everything, every illegal loan, every foreclosure, every bribe to judges and sheriffs, every hired gun payment, a complete record of corruption going back 3 years. This is enough, Grace breathed. This is enough to destroy him. That's what I thought. So I made copies, sent one to the territorial marshal in Denver, sent another to the newspaper in Kansas City, and kept this one for us. Thomas, this is incredible. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to be sure. Wanted to verify everything, and I wanted to wait until after the funeral. Didn't want to give you false hope before we laid your father to rest. Grace looked at the ledger, at the careful columns of numbers, at the proof of everything Cole had done, and she felt something crack inside her, something that had been holding her together since her father died. This doesn't bring him back, she said, her voice breaking. No, it doesn't. I still want to kill him, even with this. Even with proof. I still want him dead. Thomas took the ledger back, folded it carefully, put it in his pocket. Then he took Grace's hands in his. Listen to me, he said. Cole Brennan is leaving Red Creek. He'll be in Tucson by week's end, and the marshal will be waiting for him. He'll be arrested, tried, probably hanged for his crimes. That's not enough. I know it's not, but it's what the law can give us, and it's better than nothing. The law failed my father. I know. But if we kill Cole now, if we take justice into our own hands, we become what he is. Murderers, and your father wouldn't want that. My father's dead. He doesn't get a say. Grace. She pulled away, angry, grieving, lost. Don't tell me what my father would want. Don't tell me to be merciful. Don't tell me to let the law handle it when the law has done nothing but protect him. I'm not telling you to be merciful. I'm telling you to be smart. Cole's leaving. Let him go. Let the marshal take him. Let justice be served the right way. And if it's not, what if he runs? What if he disappears before the marshal gets there? Then we'll find him, together, and we'll finish this. But not today. Not in anger. Not when you're grieving. Grace wanted to argue, wanted to fight, wanted to ride after Cole Brennan right now and put a bullet in him, but she was so tired, so empty, so broken. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Thomas pulled her close, held her while she stood rigid in his arms. Eventually she softened, let herself lean against him, let herself be held. "I loved him," she said quietly. "My father. I didn't tell him enough, but I loved him. He knew." "How do you know?" "Because I saw the way he looked at you. That's how a father looks at a daughter he's proud of." "I know because that's how I looked at Emma." Grace pulled back to see his face. "You think he was proud of me?" "I know he was. Even though I'm violent, even though I cause problems, even though I'm not soft and gentle like women are supposed to be. Especially because of all that. Because you're strong, because you survive, because you don't break. I feel pretty broken right now. You're grieving. That's different. Grief breaks everyone. But you'll heal, and when you do, you'll be stronger than before." Grace looked at him. At this man who'd appeared in her life 2 weeks ago and changed everything, who'd stood beside her, fought for her, loved her even though she was difficult and damaged and dangerous. "Thomas." "Yes." "When this is over, when Cole's dealt with, when I figure out what comes next." She paused. "Will you still be here?" "Where else would I be?" "I don't know. You could go anywhere. Back to marshalling. Back to drifting. Back to being whoever you were before Red Creek. I don't want to be whoever I was before. I want to be whoever I'm becoming. And I'm becoming that person because of you." "That's a lot of pressure to put on someone. You can handle it." She almost smiled. Almost. "Yeah, I guess I can." They finished loading the wagon. Grace took one last look at the farmhouse, at the porch where she'd sat with her father every evening, at the barn where she'd worked since she was old enough to hold a pitchfork, at the land that had been in her family for 3 generations and was now lost forever. "Goodbye," she whispered, to the house, to her father, to everything she'd been before Cole Brennan destroyed it all. Then she climbed into the wagon and rode toward town with Thomas beside her, toward whatever came next, toward a future she couldn't see but was starting to believe might be worth living. 3 days later, word came. Cole Brennan had been arrested in Tucson. The territorial marshal had been waiting when he rode into town, had served the warrant, had taken him into custody without a fight. The trial would be in Denver in 3 months. The evidence was overwhelming. The ledger Thomas had stolen, combined with testimony from victims across 2 territories, was enough to convict him 10 times over. Cole Brennan was finished. Grace heard the news in the general store. She was buying supplies for the room she'd rented above the cafe. Small place, 1 room, but it was hers, and Thomas was right across the hall, close enough for propriety, close enough for protection, close enough that she didn't feel alone. She walked back to her room carrying the supplies and feeling strange, empty, like she'd been holding her breath for weeks and suddenly didn't know how to exhale. She'd wanted Cole dead, had planned it, had imagined it in detail, had fallen asleep every night thinking about pulling the trigger and watching him fall. But now he was arrested, would be tried, would probably hang. Justice was being served the right way, the legal way. And Grace felt nothing. She sat on her bed and stared at the wall and tried to feel something. Relief, satisfaction, joy, anything. Nothing came. There was a knock on her door. She opened it to find Thomas standing there with 2 plates of food from the cafe downstairs. "Thought you might be hungry," he said. "Not really." "Eat anyway." He came in, set the plates on the small table, pulled out a chair for her. Grace sat, picked up her fork, moved food around without eating. "You heard?" she asked. "About Cole." "Yeah, I heard." "Good news, right?" "Right. So why don't I feel good?" Thomas was quiet for a moment. "Because you wanted to be the one, wanted to pull the trigger, wanted him to know it was you ending him. That's dark. That's honest." Grace set down her fork. "Is that wrong to want that?" "No, it's human, but it's also dangerous." "Why?" "Because revenge doesn't heal anything. It just creates new wounds. I learned that in the war. Killed a lot of men who'd killed my friends. Thought it would make me feel better. It didn't. Just made me feel empty." "So what does heal it?" "Time, work, love, building something new instead of destroying something old." Grace looked at him. "You think we can do that, build something new?" "I think we're already doing it." They ate in silence after that. Comfortable silence. The kind that only exists between people who understand each other without needing words. When they finished, Thomas stood to leave. Grace caught his hand. "Stay," she said. "Grace, it's not proper." "I don't care about proper. I care about not being alone tonight." Thomas looked at her, at the vulnerability in her eyes, at the grief still raw and fresh, at the woman he'd fallen in love with even though she was complicated and difficult and scared of being hurt. "Okay," he said. "I'll stay." He pulled the chair closer to her bed, sat down, took her hand. "Not like that," Grace said. "I mean stay, here, with me." "Grace, I'm not asking for anything improper. I'm asking you to hold me, to lie beside me, to let me not be alone." Thomas hesitated, not because he didn't want to, but because he did, and once they crossed this line, there was no going back. "Please," Grace whispered. "I need you." That decided it. Thomas took off his boots, his gun belt, lay down beside her on the narrow bed. Grace curled against him, put her head on his chest, listened to his heartbeat. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For being here. For not leaving. For loving me, even though I'm a mess." "You're not a mess. You're grieving. There's a difference." "Thomas." "Yes. I think I love you too." His arms tightened around her. "You think—" "I know. I love you. I'm just scared to say it out loud." "Why?" "Because everyone I love dies. My mother, my brother, my father." "What if loving you kills you too?" "Grace, that's not how it works." "Isn't it? My father died because of me, because Cole wanted the land and I wouldn't give it to him." "Your father died because Cole Brennan is evil, not because you loved him. But if I'd given up the land, if I'd walked away, he'd still be alive." Thomas shifted to look at her. "Listen to me. Your father didn't fight for the land. He fought for you, for your future, for the principle of standing up to bullies, and he'd do it again, even knowing how it ended." "How do you know?" "Because I would. If I had a daughter like you, I'd fight for her too, no matter the cost." Grace felt tears building again. "I miss him." "I know. It hurts." "I know. When does it stop hurting?" "It doesn't. Not completely. But it gets easier. The sharp edges wear down. Eventually you can think about him without breaking. Can remember the good times without drowning in the bad." "How long did it take you with Emma and Clara?" 2 years, and I'm still not done." Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Will you tell me about them?" "Your wife and daughter." So Thomas did. He told her about Clara, how they'd met at a dance, how she'd stepped on his feet 3 times and laughed about it, how she'd said yes when he proposed even though he had nothing to offer but a deputy's salary and an uncertain future. He told her about Emma, how she'd been born during a thunderstorm, how she'd had Clara's eyes and his stubborn streak, how she'd wanted a pony for her 6th birthday but settled for a kitten because ponies were expensive. He told her about the day he came home and found them both dead, how the house had been so quiet, how he'd known before he even opened the door, how he'd buried them side by side and wanted to bury himself right next to them. And Grace listened, held him, let him grieve too, because that's what love was, holding someone's pain when they couldn't hold it alone. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other. Two broken people finding wholeness in each other's brokenness. The next morning, Grace woke to find Thomas already up, sitting in the chair, watching her sleep. "That's creepy," she said. "Sorry. You just looked peaceful. Wanted to enjoy it before you woke up and remembered everything." Grace sat up, ran her hands through her hair. "What time is it?" "Early. Sun's not up yet." "Why are you awake? Thinking. About what?" "About us. About what comes next." Grace felt her chest tighten. "Are you leaving?" "What? No. Why would you think that?" "Because everyone leaves eventually." "Grace, I'm not everyone. I'm here, I'm staying. I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to go." "Promise." "Promise." She relaxed slightly. "Okay. So, what were you thinking about?" "About the fact that I'm in love with you, and I want to marry you." "But I don't know if that's what you want." Grace stared at him. "You want to marry me?" "Yes." "Thomas, we barely know each other." "I know enough. I know you're strong and brave and stubborn. I know you love fiercely. I know you die before giving up what matters. I know you snore a little when you sleep. I know you take your coffee black. I know the way you look at the sunrise like you're daring it to disappoint you." "I don't snore." "You do, a little. It's cute." "Nothing about me is cute." "Everything about you is cute, especially when you're trying not to be." Grace felt her face heat. "Thomas?" "Grace, I'm not asking you to decide right now. I'm just telling you where I stand. When you're ready, when you've healed enough, when you feel like you can think about a future instead of just surviving the present. I want that future to be with you. What if I'm never ready? Then I'll wait. What if waiting is forever? Then I'll wait forever." Grace looked at him, at his face, his eyes, the absolute certainty there, and something inside her unlocked, something she'd been holding closed since Marcus Dalton, since the town turned against her, since she learned that being strong meant being alone. "Ask me again in 6 months," she said. "What? 6 months. Give me 6 months to grieve, to heal, to figure out who I am without my father, and then ask me again. And you'll say yes. I'll say maybe, but that's better than no." Thomas smiled, wide, real, the kind of smile that transformed his whole face. "I'll take maybe." "Good." He stood, came to the bed, kissed her forehead. "I should go, before the whole town sees me leaving your room and decides we're living in sin. Let them think what they want. You say that now, but you still have to live here." "Do I though? Maybe I'll leave Red Creek, start over somewhere new." "Where would you go?" "Don't know. Anywhere, everywhere, somewhere nobody knows me or my scandals." "Can I come with you?" "To everywhere, to anywhere, as long as it's with you." Grace felt something warm spreading through her chest, something that might have been hope, might have been love, might have been the beginning of healing. "Yeah," she said. "You can come." 6 weeks later, a letter arrived, from Tucson, from a woman named Sarah Mitchell. Grace opened it sitting at the cafe, read it once, then again, then a third time. Thomas found her there an hour later, still holding the letter, face pale. "What's wrong?" he asked. She handed him the letter without speaking. He read, "Dear Miss Harper, my name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm a widow with 2 children in Tucson. I heard about what happened to your father. I heard about Cole Brennan, and I'm writing to tell you something you need to know. Cole Brennan is here. He's not in custody. The marshal was paid off. The warrant was destroyed. Cole is free, and he's doing to us what he did to Red Creek. Last week he foreclosed on my farm. I owe $800. I can't pay. He came to my house, made me an offer, said there are other ways I could settle the debt. I refused. He said I have 1 week. I'm writing because I heard you let him live. I heard you had a chance to kill him and didn't. I heard you chose mercy. I'm not writing to blame you. I'm writing to ask, did you make the right choice? Because I have 2 children who will be homeless next week because a man you spared is doing this all over again. I don't know what else to do. I'm scared. If there's anything you can do, please help. Sarah Mitchell. Thomas lowered the letter, looked at Grace, saw the guilt, the horror, the realization of what mercy had cost. "It's not your fault," he said. "Isn't it I let him live? I chose mercy over justice, and now this woman and her children are paying for it. You couldn't have known. The marshal was supposed to arrest him. But he didn't, and I could have stopped it. Could have killed Cole when I had the chance. Should have." Thomas sat down beside her. "Grace, listen to me. What Cole does is Cole's choice, not yours. You're not responsible for his evil. But I'm responsible for letting it continue, for choosing mercy when justice was needed. You chose what your father would have wanted, what he taught you. That mercy is harder than killing. Maybe my father was wrong. Or maybe the system is broken. Maybe the real problem is corrupt marshals, bought judges, a law that protects the powerful and abandons the weak." Grace looked at him. "What do I do? What do you want to do?" "I want to ride to Tucson and finish what I should have finished weeks ago." "Then let's ride to Tucson." "Thomas, you're a lawman." "Not anymore. Sheriff Wade fired me 2 days ago, said I was insubordinate, said I violated protocol, said Red Creek didn't need a deputy who couldn't follow orders. He fired you. You didn't tell me. Didn't want to burden you. You were dealing with enough. So what will you do?" "Whatever you need me to do. If you want to go to Tucson, we go to Tucson. If you want to stay here and try to help from a distance, we do that. If you want to forget about Cole Brennan and start a new life somewhere else, we do that too. What do you think I should do?" Thomas was quiet for a long time. "I think you should do what lets you sleep at night, what lets you look in the mirror without hating what you see, what honors your father's memory without betraying your own sense of justice." "That's not an answer." "Because I don't have one. This is your choice, Grace, and whatever you choose, I'll support it." Grace read the letter again, thought about Sarah Mitchell, about her 2 children, about mercy and justice and the weight of choosing between them. She thought about her father, about his last words, about how he'd told her people mattered, about how he'd believed in forgiveness and second chances and the idea that good men chose to be good even when bad men made it hard. She thought about Thomas, about his wife and daughter, about how he'd failed to save them and had been haunted by it ever since, about how he'd chosen to stand beside her even when it cost him everything. She thought about herself, about who she was, about who she wanted to be, about whether she was the woman who chose mercy or the woman who chose revenge. And slowly, painfully, she made her decision. "I'm going to send her money," Grace said. $800, enough to pay off her debt. "Grace, that's most of what you have left." "I know, but it's the right thing to do." "And Cole will face justice eventually, maybe not from me, maybe not today, but evil always pays in the end. I have to believe that. Because if I don't, if I become the person who solves problems with violence, then I'm no better than him." Thomas took her hand. "Your father would be proud." "Would he? Or would he think I'm being weak? He'd think you're being strong, because mercy is harder than killing. He told you that, and he was right." Grace wrote back to Sarah Mitchell, sent money, told her to use it to pay the debt, told her to stand her ground, told her that evil could be fought with courage, not just violence. She didn't know if it would help, didn't know if Sarah would survive, didn't know if Cole would continue to destroy lives until someone finally stopped him permanently. But she knew she'd made the choice she could live with, the choice her father would have made, the choice that let her be Grace Harper instead of just another killer in a territory full of them. 2 months later, word came from Tucson. Cole Brennan had been found dead in his office, shot 3 times, once in the chest, twice in the head. No one knew who did it. No one was arrested. The investigation went nowhere. Grace heard the news and felt strange, not satisfaction, not joy, not even relief, just tired. just sad, just grateful it was finally over. "Good riddance," Thomas said when she told him. "Yeah. You okay?" "I don't know. Should I feel bad that I'm glad he's dead?" "No, he was evil. The world's better without him. But someone had to become a killer to make that happen. Someone had to pull the trigger, had to carry that weight. Better them than you." "Is it though? Or did I just pass the burden to someone else?" Thomas pulled her close. "Grace, you did what you could. Saved Sarah Mitchell's family. Chose mercy when you could have chosen revenge. That's enough. That has to be enough." "Does it ever feel like enough? Like we've done enough?" "No. But we keep trying anyway. That's what being good means. Trying, even when it's hard, even when it feels pointless, even when evil wins more than it should." Grace leaned against him. Let herself be held. Let herself rest. A week later they married. Small ceremony. Just Doc Morrison and his wife as witnesses. No celebration. No party. Just two people promising to stand beside each other, to love each other, to face whatever came next together. They left Red Creek the next day, packed everything they owned into a wagon and rode west, toward Colorado, toward mountains and new beginnings and a future neither of them could predict. On their last night before crossing the territory line, they made camp under the stars. Grace sat by the fire while Thomas tended the horses. She thought about her father, about the farm, about everything she'd lost. But she also thought about Thomas, about the life they were building, about the fact that she wasn't alone anymore, wasn't carrying everything by herself. "You okay?" Thomas asked, sitting beside her. "Yeah, I think I am." "You think or you know?" "I know. For the first time in months, I actually know." "What changed?" "I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. Maybe I just finally accepted that loss is part of living. That grief doesn't mean you're broken. That starting over doesn't mean forgetting what came before." "Your father would be proud of you." "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." Grace was quiet for a moment. Then, "Do you think mercy was the right choice?" "I think mercy was your choice, and that makes it right." "Even if Cole hurt more people before he died." "You're not responsible for his evil. You're responsible for your own choices. And you chose to be the person your father raised you to be. That's enough." "Is it?" "It has to be. Because the alternative is carrying guilt for things you can't control. And that's no way to live." Grace looked at the stars, at the vast emptiness above, at the endless possibility of what came next. "I love you," she said. "I love you too. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me we'll be happy, even if it's just for a little while, even if it doesn't last. Promise me we'll have happy." "I promise. We'll have happy. We'll have love. We'll have a life together, for as long as we get." That's not very reassuring. It's honest. I guess that's better than comforting lies. It's what we have. They sat together by the fire. Two people who'd lost everything. Two people who'd found each other. Two people starting over. And somewhere in Red Creek on a hill overlooking 300 acres that used to be Harper land. William Harper's grave stood in the prairie grass. Simple stone. Simple words. William Harper, father, farmer, teacher of mercy. And beneath that added by Grace before she left, "He taught me that mercy is harder than revenge. That strength is choosing not to break. That love means standing up even when standing costs everything. I will remember." The prairie wind blew. The grass moved. The sun set and rose and set again. And life went on. Because that's what life does. It goes on. Through grief, through loss, through impossible choices and uncertain futures. It goes on. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you find someone to go on with, someone who stands beside you, someone who loves you not despite your scars, but because of them. Grace Harper and Thomas Reed rode toward Colorado, toward mountains, toward whatever came next, and behind them, Red Creek slowly healed. The new bank owners were fair. Sheriff Wade retired. A new sheriff came. Young man, honest, determined to do right. Cole Brennan's empire crumbled. His properties were sold. His victims were compensated. Justice delayed, but not denied, finally arrived. And in Tucson, Sarah Mitchell raised her 2 children on the farm she'd almost lost. Raised them to be brave, to be kind, to be strong, to choose mercy when they could, to choose justice when they must. She never knew who saved her farm, never knew about Grace Harper's sacrifice, never knew about the choice between mercy and revenge. But she lived. Her children lived. And that was enough. Because that's what mercy creates. Life, hope, possibility. And that's what revenge destroys. Even when it's justified. Even when it's earned. Even when the person deserves it. Grace Harper understood that now. Understood that choosing mercy didn't mean weakness, didn't mean letting evil win, meant choosing to be something other than what evil created. And as she rode beside Thomas into the setting sun toward mountains and new beginnings, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not perfect peace, not the peace of resolution or completion, but the peace of knowing she'd made the right choice, the hard choice, the choice her father would have wanted. And that was enough. That had to be enough. Because in the end, that's all anyone has. The choices they make, the people they love, the legacy they leave. William Harper left a legacy of mercy, of standing up, of refusing to break. Grace Harper carried that legacy forward, into a new life, a new beginning, a new chance. And the weight of mercy, which had seemed unbearable, slowly became bearable, became manageable, became just another thing she carried, like grief, like love, like hope. Because that's what strength is, not refusing to carry weight, but learning how to carry it, learning how to keep walking even when the weight feels impossible. Grace Harper kept walking, with Thomas beside her, toward whatever came next, and in the end, that was everything.